So what is the real problem here? Is it that Sheryl Sandberg asked employees to do research on the financial connections or financial interests of George Soros as it pertains to Facebook? Or that Facebook's explanation of what happened and who knew what when keeps shifting?
It's the latter. I mean, it makes sense. Anyone who's running a company is going to want to know what motivations their critics have, and is going to want to figure out where the money is coming from. This is an instance where Sandberg initially denied knowing anything about the opposition research firm that ultimately linked Soros, I should say, to the Freedom from Facebook protesters. And then a few days later changed her story, and now we hear that she was actually at the beginning of asking her employees to look into Soros. So it just goes to show how they're not keeping their story straight, and they're still trying to deal with this as a perception problem instead of just being transparent about what happened.
Now, here's a statement we got from Facebook. Mr. Soros is a prominent investor, and we looked into his investments and trading activity related to Facebook. That research was already underway when Sheryl sent an email asking if Mr. Soros had shorted Facebook stock. Sheryl never directed research on Freedom from Facebook, but as she said before, takes full responsibility for any activity that happened on her watch. Now, Sarah Miller, of course, you are the spokesperson for Freedom from Facebook. What is your reaction to this statement?
Look, I think what we think is that if you take this up at a higher level, what it shows is that, Facebook simply cannot be trusted. And they've sort of been trafficking on this notion that, look, you can trust us to fix our problems. We're this warm and fuzzy company. We want to bring people together. And I think what this latest revelation shows is that, Facebook will do what it takes to protect their reputation and their profits. And if that includes lying to the public or lying to members of Congress or lying to others to do that, so be it. Facebook is just like any other monopoly, and they're willing to go to great lengths to protect that status.
And you've gone so far as to say that you think the FTC should break Facebook up. I think it's important that we clarify what exactly Freedom from Facebook's relationship to George Soros is. Does he have a financial interest in your organization?
No, he provides no funding to Freedom from Facebook. It's a separate initiative. So that's not correct.
It's an offshoot of the Open Markets Institute, which, as I understand it, Soros did fund.
Yes, we do receive a small amount of funding for a different type of program for the Open Markets Institute, but that is not related to Freedom from Facebook and its actions as a coalition.
So I guess I'm confused. So how can it not be at all related? If there is money coming into the organization that is an umbrella organization, I have heard a lot of confusion from people about how this actually works.
Sure. It's pretty simple. It's a separate initiative. Our organization, the Open Markets Institute, also believes that Facebook should be broken up, but the activities of our coalition are a separate initiative that are not explicitly supported by the Open Society Foundation.
So, I want to talk a little bit more about, the latest revelation that Sheryl Sandberg ordered or asked employees to do research on George Soros. Antonio Garcia Martinez, who's a former Facebook employee, thinks that the New York Times spin on the story, that the headline was misleading. They didn't look into his finances. He tweeted they looked into whether he shorted Facebook stock after slamming the company. Soros' fortune stems from his famously breaking the Bank of England by shorting the pound and forcing the UK out of the proto-euro. Sarah Fryer, isn't this something that most companies would do? Look into the financial interests of people making negative statements about them?
Yes, and I think that Facebook has been especially concerned about what the motivations of their critics might be because they've had so many high-profile critics in the last couple years. And I, just heard a lot of concern about, why is this former employee speaking out? Do they have something to gain? Are they trying to raise money for their fund? I mean, this is not the only instance where Facebook has tried to figure out if their critics have an axe to grind. That doesn't mean that Facebook isn't worth critiquing, that even if they have, something going on financially, that there isn't still a reason to speak out. It just means that Facebook wants to know what's going on, and I think most companies would.
So, Sarah Miller, there are many different problems and many different reasons why Facebook is being critiqued here. What do you think is the biggest problem? If Facebook is doing what most companies would do to protect themselves, what's the problem with Facebook doing it too?
I think the problem is that it doesn't match with the image that they're wanting to promote, and it also doesn't match with what they're telling members of Congress and others that they'll do, which is fix the problems themselves. They're saying, look, trust us, we can fix this. We know we're breaking democracy. We know we have problems with information on our platform, but don't worry, we'll fix it in good faith. And I think what we've seen with these latest revelations is you cannot take Facebook in good faith. They're out to protect their reputations and their bottom line, and they aren't going to, cooperate necessarily on things that aren't good for those two things.